Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the next session, Adapting to Microsoft Exchange Online, Understanding Azure's Email Service Option. My name is Anna. I'm an event planner for Reactor, joining you from Redmond, Washington. Before we start, I do have some quick housekeeping. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. While we absolutely encourage engagement in the chat, we ask that you please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional, and on topic. Keep an eye on that chat. We'll be dropping helpful links and checking for questions for our presenters to answer live. With that, I'd love to turn it over to our presenters for today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello and welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone tuning in. My name is Milan Kaur, and I'm a product manager with Azure Communication Services, and I'm thrilled to be hosting this webinar. Joining me today are two incredible experts, Tommaso and Manish, who will guide us through the changes or the recent announcements that Exchange Online has made, and also Azure Communication Services email. So Manish and Tommaso, I'll let you have a moment to introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. First of all, great to be here to talk about, the topic here. I'm the product manager for ACS Email and looking forward to this conversation.
Nice to meet you all. My name is Tommaso Toniolo. I'm a senior cloud solution architect within the support for mission critical business. My focus areas are primarily Exchange Online, Defender for Office 365, and in the recent past, I've also been helping Exchange and Exchange Online customers to move towards Azure Communication Services email for their mass mailing.
Amazing. Thank you and welcome again, Tommaso and Manish. Today, we are going to talk about the Exchange Online announcements and changes in ACS email, like I said. So I'm looking forward to this conversation where I want us to cover three main key areas. One is, of course, understanding the announcements or changes better. Second is how can our customers evaluate the impact and understand how the transition journey should look like. And third is understanding ACS email as an alternative option. So I'm going to ask you questions related to these three areas. So let's dive in. My first question is that let's start by setting the context, and let's start by explaining what are the announcements that Microsoft Exchange Online made recently.
Yeah. See, at a high level, like from the recent announcements, there were two announcements that impacted Exchange Online customers, right? The first one is where Exchange Online will permanently remove the support for basic auth with client submission, basically SMTP auth. And they're planning to do it in September 2025. So this means any applications or devices which are using basic auth will not be able to use it as a way of authentication. And they must have to, they must use modern authentication like OAuth when they're using SMTP auth to send emails. So that's the first announcement. The second announcement is that the Exchange Online will also begin enforcing an external recipient rate limit, which basically means that customers will only be able to send 2,000 external recipients email in 24 hours. So these are the two kind of big announcements that Exchange has made, which impacts the customers here.
And when you say 2,000 external recipients, are we talking about 2,000 number of emails sent, or are we talking about 2,000 unique sender addresses?
Yeah, and to be very precise here, we are also talking about external recipient. We're not talking about the email sent within their tenant. We're talking about external recipients here, and yeah, it is like unique external recipient emails per se.
All right.
And again, more details can be read through the articles and the announcement that they have made.
Okay. And to add a little bit more context for our viewers who are watching, basic auth is an authentication mechanism where username and password is passed over the network. Taking a step back, Manish and Tommaso, what are the most common scenarios you think our customers use Exchange for?
I think the first scenario is mailbox management, but if we leave that aside for a moment, Exchange on premises and Exchange online have been used for a variety of business to consumer scenarios. These include, for example, the one-time password for the multi-factor authentication prompts from two-factor authentication components, application to person emails, application to application emails even. We have scenarios with conversational email for sales, support teams interacting, for example, with existing customer or new customers for the most various reasons. We have seen financial institution sending automated email upon trading confirmation, for example, or invoices, billing notification, marketing messages, newsletters, marketing campaign. Um, think about scenarios like when you purchase a flight or a train, from the moment you make the purchase to the time you are departing, you receive a series of notifications. That's also traffic that can fall into those scenarios.
So everything related to mailing, basically both internal, but also a lot of scenarios that you called out are in the B2C communication space where businesses are reaching out to their customers. Great. So for any of these customers who might be watching this webinar, if they have to evaluate whether they're getting impacted by the recent announcements or not, is there an easy way for them to do so?
Absolutely, and that's a very good question. So I'll take the basic authentication deprecation first. Customers can go to their Azure portal, they can go to the Microsoft Entra ID, browse to the sign-in logs, and they'll be able to review users that are authenticating with username and password and basic authentication. That's the first place they should look at for identifying if they are into the basic authentication deprecation scenario. Now, leaving basic authentication aside, if customers are hit by the external recipient rate limit, there is a very easy self-serve approach. And actually, let me do a demo. So if our customer go to security.microsoft.com, in here, they can browse to advanced hunting, which they can see here on the left, advanced hunting. In the query tab, they can create a query where they can query the email events, they can filter out for intra-org or outbound messages, and then they can summarize per type of messages, outbound or intra-org, and the total number of messages. In here, you see some examples with some senders that I'm just using a low number for simplicity, so 5 and 10 instead of 2,000, 10,000. But in here, you can see scenarios where you have 0 external messages. Those could go, for example, to high volume email, HVE. And you can also see other scenarios where you have external messages. Those will need to go to Azure Communication Services, or in short, ACS. One thing I want to call out regarding the approach is that customers can use this self-service approach. That's the first way they can evaluate if they're in those scenarios. For managed customers that have an account team at Microsoft, I recommend reaching out through their unified contract. They can raise an advisor support case, or they can request a CSA to be assigned, such as an ED, which can help them investigate those scenarios and support them along the path. For the most complex scenarios, my team, the support for mission critical team, which belongs to the Microsoft Enhanced Solution Services family, can offer a tailored approach aimed at ensuring a smooth transition for highly custom and mission critical solution by allocating a designated pool of CSAs that can guide the customer through all those changes and mitigate any risk.
I see. So there are self-serve options where you spoke about Azure sign-in logs, and also the advanced hunting portal, which is available to our customers to go and check out themselves. There's another, approach for managed customers is to reach out to their CSAs. And with CSAs, do you mean the cloud solution architects?
That's correct, Milan. Yes.
Okay. So thank you for that information, Tommaso. What are the solutions that Microsoft is offering to this group of customers who might be impacted?
That's a very good question. So let me start by speaking about basic authentication deprecation first. Uh, we have only two options, either moving to modern authentication OAuth, or we can consider other solutions like high volume email or Azure Communication Services email, which both supports basic authentication. Now, let me starting by making some clarity about HV, high volume email, and Azure Communication Services, ACS. HV is an M365, Microsoft 365 service designed for managing high volume of internal messages. We call them intra-tenant, so within the organization. There is a daily limit of 2,000 external messages still for those HV accounts. Azure Communication Services, on the other hand, that's a subscription-based Azure service that provides both SMTP and API level access to developers for sending and managing application that needs access to email. It's built for high throughput, does not have any limitations, so there is no maximum number of messages you can send in a day or in an hour, and you can target both internal and external recipient. Now, if we talk about solutions, the solution really depend on the type and the volume of the traffic being sent and the specific requirement of the organization. Since Exchange Online is rolling out this 2,000 recipient per day limit for external recipient, if your solution exceeds this limit for external recipient, then Azure Communication Services is your best option, as HV has a similar limit. ACS, which supports both SMTP and API, have also advanced capability as compared to HV, which only support internal recipient and is only limited to SMTP. So ACS is, in a nutshell, a better suited for handling hybrid and complex scenarios. Another advantage of ACS, that's something I found out while working with customer, um, and that's something incredible once you get to use it. It's the advanced telemetry. So you can track message failure rate, so you can be sure that your messages are being received. You can look at user interaction statistics, which will tell you if an email has been read, for example, and also if any link has been clicked. And there is also simplified management of suppression lists, which is a great perk in nowadays mass emailing. So it's a very valuable for large organization and any organization looking at boosting their email hygiene and their deliverability ratios.
Okay.
And I would like to kind of summarize and also add on to some of the things that Tommaso just talked about, right? So as he said, right, if customers are looking at scenarios where they want to just send emails to internal recipients and have very limited, external recipient scenarios, then HV is a solution that they can adopt. If they're looking for mass mailing where both internal and external recipients are in play, that's where Azure Communication Services email platform comes into picture and can serve the customer's need. There are customers who still have Exchange Server on premises in a hybrid configuration. So they can actually use basic auth to authenticate with Exchange Server, on premises, or configure the Exchange Server on premises with receive connectors, right? And these receive connectors kind of allow anonymous relay on Exchange Servers as well. So they can actually read a little bit more about them through our sites. While everything that we talked about, it kind of simplifies the options, but we do know that enterprise have complex infrastructures and their needs are complex. And they tend to have application which falls in multiple buckets around here, right? And that's why in such situations, we do suggest that Microsoft Field is an important role, and the enterprises can actually come, or any customers can come and reach out to their field, and they can help with the journey. As a product team, we partner with them pretty closely. So that's where, we do get to know and work with them. Additionally, I know you're going to talk about some of the blogs that we have. So we'll be publishing some blogs in the future to kind of share our learnings with with the broader audience here.
Got it. And Manish, do you want to talk a little bit more about Azure Communication Services email?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that Tommaso kind of touched base at a high level around it. But for folks who do not know what Azure Communication Service as a portfolio is, right? And we keep referring it as ACS. I just want to start from there. So as an Azure Communication Services platform, we support all communication channels for our customers, right? Starting from voice, video, chat, SMS, WhatsApp, and of course, email. I represent the email piece, but we have a big team supporting the broader channels as well. As a part of this, broader portfolio, email service allows customers to send high volume emails, right? Both internal and external stakeholders can be reached out. But one of the key principles that as a Azure Communication Services is to have a simplified developer experience. What it basically means is we want to have an easy experience for the administrators to manage the access controls using our Azure portal. At the same time, the actual back and forth with the organization administration is taken away from the developers, and developers can use our various ways to send emails to develop their solutions. And that way, it actually helps us to provide good experience to both these stakeholders for us. Besides this, I do want to highlight that besides APIs, SDKs and SMTP, we also support other ways, like we have some connectors as well. Tommaso touched base upon one thing. As a platform, we are scalable. We are, we are meant to be reliable. For example, if a customer wants to send, say, up to 1 to 2 million emails per hour, they can actually leverage our platform. But we also don't stop there. If there are customers who are asking for more, we do kind of work with them and we get into conversations with them. Yeah.
Actually, I do have a question there. I've seen that in the community, this question comes up quite often, that how do customers request increase in their email sending quota when using ACS email? Is that something you can talk about right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, happy to kind of talk about it. So one of the things that as an email platform services, right, we have a default quota, which is what you're referring to. But that's there for a purpose. Couple of things that customers, we provided this default quota. Along with that, we also provide Azure Managed Domain. These things allow customers to quickly onboard to our service and actually play around with it. But I understand that, when customers are looking for a high quota, there are reasons why we are starting with a low quota, and there are two big reasons. Because we support high email throughput need, a lot of customers test our platform and they immediately want to move into their high email throughput to our platform. And that's one of the places where we put in a caution that, hey, when you're moving in a high volume email from one platform to another, to ours, it has to be done gradually. Our recommendation is, take a time of 2 to 4 weeks, and we have worked with a lot of enterprises and it works very well. What it does is, it allows customers to closely monitor the delivery status. And this gradual increase enables the third-party mail service providers to adapt to the changes in the IP that they will observe when customers move to our IP, our ACS platform. So that's one important thing that customers have to evaluate and understand. While having said that, this is a one-time migration approach. But we also seen, after working with a lot of customers, that when they try to onboard, they postpone the setup of NDRs or managing of the failure rate. And that is very important for us to manage the service, right? So another NDRs is non-delivery reports. That's another way of saying that how many emails you have sent, how many was actually delivered, how many got hard bounces or soft bounces. Now, this is what is measured, the third-party mail service measure the failure rate, and to understand if this domain and an IP reputation, they manage this reputation, which impacts the deliverability of these emails. So one of the ways for us is to have low quota for customers to set up these these reports or telemetry, and set up their robust processes to manage the failure, so that when they actually onboard our platform with high volume, their processes are robust enough to help them manage their sender reputation. And this has worked very well for both these approach, migration approach and failure rate approach, for us and the customers. It's a very straightforward and a very simple process. It's in our documentation as well. There's a template. The customers can use that template, fill in the information, and actually submit a support ticket. And that's how we can actually approve and actually work with them sometimes to get them the high quota.
Okay, got it. And when you get a chance, can you pull up this documentation or a link to this documentation or where they can find the support ticket in the chat
Mhm.
during any time during the conversation when you get a chance?
Absolutely. I'm more than happy to kind of share the documentation now if that helps.
Sure.
Yeah. So there's a service limit. This is our learned documentation. We'll walk you guys through some more. But the guidance that I just provided is actually listed here as well with more details and more insights to it. At the same time, when you go here, you can click on the quota increase process for email domains, and here's the process which you can follow to support to increase this, to launch a support ticket. Okay. So hopefully this helps to kind of walk through this process here.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for quickly sharing that, Manish. Another question that I think might be top of mind of a lot of customers is that Exchange is part of M365, and Microsoft Exchange works on a licensing-based model, whereas ACS, Azure Communication Services, is an Azure service which follows a subscription model. So, can you talk to us a little bit more about licensing or the subscription model on the ACS side for email?
Absolutely. And I think you touched base upon the biggest thing that customers need to understand is that Azure Communication Services is part of the Azure ecosystem. And we are a pay-as-you-go model. So all customers need is an Azure subscription, and they can start using ACS email. I think that's as simple as that. We also know there are some customers who get Azure credits. That's another thing that they can apply through their Azure portals and leverage ACS. Our pricing model is very simple in terms of pay as you go, based on the number of emails sent by the customers and the data transferred through the email. That's what the customers pay for. I always recommend customers to leverage the Azure pricing calculator because it helps you to model the pricing or the cost implications that comes.
Okay, sounds good. There is a question in the chat by Gopi K. Gopi is asking, can we replace SMTP gateways to ACS email? That's the first question. And second is, does it support spam and email protection services?
So SMTP gateway, and Tommaso, you can correct me as well. Yes, you can. However, there might be some complexities around it. That's where we need to go a little bit more detail into that, right? When you talk about spam and email protection, right, I think they're talking about services like Purview or MDO right now. Is that unfortunately you can't talk about it, right? But we do. So ACS by itself has its own spam protection, and again, something that we monitor on our end, right? So we do have that, but it's not configurable by customer. We as a product manage that protection. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So moving along, Manish, you spoke about ACS email and how pricing works. If somebody wants to get started and somebody wants to start exploring Azure Communication Services email, what are your recommendations? Like, what are the things that they should be looking at right now?
Yeah, definitely. So I want to highlight a couple of things, right? One, as a managed customers, a lot of our customers have support from our Microsoft account team. Sometimes that becomes the easier and the faster channel for our customers to come and explore the challenges, find a solution, and ACS becomes a part of that solution, right? So I always recommend, if you have that managed channel, if you're paying for it, why not use it?
Yeah.
And again, we as a product team work with them very closely. So that's number one. But at the same time, we also have a self-serve documentation that we can that the customers can leverage to understand ACS email and start playing around with it. We have some samples and quick starts with a ton of email related content for the tech community blog as well, right? So that's something that customers can leverage as well. My best suggestion is get your hands dirty. If you have an Azure portal access or a subscription, you can actually just log into the Azure portal, set up your custom domains. Even if you don't have a custom domain, you can leverage the Azure managed domain that we have, connect
Which
the
is free
domain,
to get.
and
Which
actually
is free to
start.
get.
Pardon?
Sorry, everything which is free to get. Like you
Which
can
is
get
free
it
to
free.
get, yes. The only caveat is you can't have high volume emails through that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can actually leverage that and just set up your domain and send in emails. And I think that is a very nice way of getting used to how ACS email can serve your needs. Now, we do work with cloud architects like Tommaso to find which in turn kind of work with Exchange customers as well. So they have an existing relationship and understand the scenarios. So we are constantly learning through Tommaso and other solution architects and talking to the customers directly. So which we are actually actively working to document these learning and share it as well in our blogs and posts as well.
Absolutely. And folks, Azure Communication Services Tech Community blog could be your one-stop shop to get to know about any latest announcements, any new samples that we are launching. The link is ak.ms/ACS blog. So keep an eye on that. That's the first place where we publish a lot of these things which we want our customers to know. So, Tommaso, coming to you. As part of your role, you work with a lot of Exchange Online customers who are going through the transition as we speak. So, are there any learnings or observations that you have had from working in the field in regards to this transition?
Oh, yeah, there are many. Let me start by saying that one thing I've experienced in large organization is that often the users of the application, the developers of the same, the teams managing the mail flow are usually all separate. Sometimes, or actually oftentimes, they don't talk to each other, or they may not even be aware of all the parties involved. That's the first complexity. So we've already discussed earlier in this chat how to identify the top senders through advanced hunting as a mean to understand what sender addresses are sending mass mailing.
Mhm.
So once those sender addresses have been identified, the next step is the correct identification of all the key stakeholders or all the key players that are sending those messages. There might be multiple applications sending from the same sender address, for example. There
Mhm.
might be applications that are business critical and other that are not. So that's the first learning, the identification of key players. Uh, the second part consists into understanding what who these applications are and what they are doing, because every application might have a different mean and a different target. Some of those might be sending internal messages, some other might be sending external messages, and other a mix of those.
Yeah.
Um, Understanding how those messages are sent is also quite key. Are they sending through an SMTP relay that sits on premises? Is that an Exchange server? Are they targeting a connector in Exchange Online?
Mhm.
Can they be reconfigured to just target ACS natively? That would be nice and easy. But what if that's not possible? Do they need to develop new functionalities which can come at a price for customers? All these factors will need to be taken into account in order to define the best strategy. We also have to consider that applications might be using SMTP, which we all know, so Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, but there are others that might be using other means to send messages, Exchange Web Services or EWS in short, or Graph API even, so they connect to a mailbox and then they submit the message. So scenarios may be very different, and the correct identification of scenarios can help simplifying um, the process to define which approach to adopt for this migration, HV versus ACS, a mix of both, etc. One thing that I've seen multiple customers asking about is, what if I have scenarios that include internal and external messages? And what if I want to only send external messages through ACS because they are the only one breaching the limits? And what if I want to keep the internal messages within the organization? Usually it's a hybrid organization
Mhm.
composed of Exchange on premises and Exchange online. In those scenarios, which I found quite interesting, um, we don't have any native solution as such. And that's exactly to achieve that, which for one of the customers I collaborate with, I've developed a solution. It's a transport agent, which implements conditional routing in Microsoft Exchange. So exactly for those scenarios where customers are targeting an on-premise Exchange server before reaching Exchange Online and then breaching the limits, with the use of a transport agent, they can bifurcate the traffic and only direct the external one to ACS and keep the reminder one internal. The transport agent is available on GitHub. I've released it on my personal GitHub repository. And I've seen more and more customer and enterprises being looking into that. So feel free to check it out.
Great. I'm so happy to see that you actually took this common pattern or scenario that you were seeing with your customers and actually developed a project that could, help them navigate these changes. So thanks for sharing the GitHub link with our audiences. So with that, I think we are towards our closing note. So to everyone watching, you saw that we covered what are these announcements. We spoke about Exchange retiring basic auth in 2025, and also getting in some sender limits, which is like 2,000 external sender recipient emails to be precise. And we spoke about what are the options to evaluate if the customers are getting impact. And Tommaso, correct me if I've gotten this wrong. There's Azure sign-in logs, and there is advanced hunting option for the self-serve customers. But then again, both Manish and Tommaso recommended that if you are a managed account, you should and absolutely must reach out to your account team and work with a cloud solution architect who can work with your solution. Like Tommaso said, it's never, black and white. It's a combination of, sometimes on-prem or Exchange Online, external and internal emails, more like a hybrid, solution. So our cloud solution architects and our product team for email and HPE would be able to help you out. So do reach out. And I do want to also summarize all the all the wonderful resources that we shared during this conversation, and thank you, Manish, for bringing this up. There are links for understanding the Exchange Online announcements in depth. These were posted on the Exchange blog post, and then there's a link for Azure Communication Services email quick start. There's a link for tech community blog, and then also Tommaso's transport agent that he spoke about, which is available on GitHub. Again, if you want to stay, connected with us, feel free to drop any new feature requests that you may have for Azure Communication Services product team on our idea board, ak.msacs idea board, and keep an eye out on our Azure Communication Services blog. So that's it from me, Manish and Tommaso. Thank you again for your time. And if there's anything that you'd like to add towards our closing note, please feel free to share. Manish, you are on mute somehow.
Yeah, I mean, just wanted to say it was a great conversation, and as you covered the most part, important part. Like, we are here to help.
Absolutely. And I also want to emphasize that the purpose of this webinar was to give our audiences or our customers starting points to start thinking about these changes, right? And to start thinking about the options that are there. So I hope our audiences did find some of these links useful, where they can go and start learning about the impact and how they can, cope, how they can think about migrating their solutions. All right. So bye, everyone. Thank you for joining in, and thank you for watching it on demand later.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone, for joining, and another thank you to our speakers. We are always looking to improve our sessions and your experience. If you have any feedback for us, we'd love to hear what you have to say. You can find the link on the screen or in the chat. Today's event code is 4430, and we will see you at the next one.